Welcome to Let's Talk. This week's episode, this is number 5, is called Walking with Grief. So today I wanted to talk about grief. Not that it's very fun to talk about grief, but because today is an anniversary of my own. And as you know, those of you who've experienced losses of different kinds, you tend to have these dates hang around in your mind and you kind of notice, oh, I'm approaching that date, it's coming up. And we carry a lot of meaning attached to those dates. So for me, April 29th is a significant date. 26 years ago today, I was a college student. I was with my friends and my sister, and we went to a college volleyball game, and it was lots of fun, very exciting. We had a big surprise win, and it was, everybody was just celebrating and so excited. And as we're walking out to the car to go out to eat or something with our friends afterwards, I just had this thought that I was going to ride in the car with my friends instead of with my sister. And as we walked through the parking lot and it was dark, it was nighttime, I just thought, I'm going to call shotgun and sit in the front seat. And within a moment, that thought just kind of left my mind. And so we continued walking through the parking lot. And again, I had that thought, oh, yeah, I was going to call a shotgun so I could sit in the front seat. And a second later, that thought just left my mind again. And the third time, I thought, oh, yeah, I was going to call shotgun. By that point, we had reached my friend's car. And I just had this thought like, oh, I should let someone taller sit in the front seat because it was a 2-door car. You had to climb in and, slide the seat forward and climb into the back. And being the only girl in the group, and I was much shorter than the other 3 guys I was with, then I thought, I guess I should let someone taller sit in the front seat. And I remember having this moment of like, where do I sit? Do I sit behind the driver? Do I sit behind the passenger seat? And for whatever reason, I climbed in behind the driver's seat. Within a few minutes, we had a terrible collision on one of the main roads in this city that we were in. And in order to avoid hitting another vehicle, my friend who was driving swerved and hit right into a traffic light post. And traffic light posts are extremely thick and very tall and sturdy and strong. And so it's like hitting a brick wall. And instantly we were all just kind of thrown forward. And my friend sitting next to me fell on top of the friend in the passenger seat and he was crushed. And he quickly died of his injuries. But I didn't know it until maybe an hour later when we were at the hospital. But so I was taken by ambulance to be evaluated. My sister came, my brother came, they came to the hospital. My parents were living in Germany, or no, sorry, Russia, stationed in Moscow, Russia, for my dad's job. And so we found ourselves in a very overwhelming situation, very terrifying, very disorienting. And I didn't know how to really cope with this. And for at least the first few days, especially that first few days, I had some really intense flashbacks and nightmares. And it was like it was just playing constantly in front of my eyes, even though I was looking around and trying to talk to somebody and, we're having to make decisions and I had to change my plans. I was about to leave for the summer, but now I was injured and not severely. Thankfully, I had my seatbelt on, but I had a lot of pain. And so I needed to stay put and get some care. So there was just a lot of upheaval all in that moment of dramatic change. But it was like, yeah, it was really strange. It was like a movie screen was in front of my eyes that I could see through, but I could see just kind of the events of like crashing and glass and shouts and, everything that was happening. And so that was really my first experience with grief. As a 19-year-old, I'd certainly felt disappointed. I'd had my heart broken and been broken up with and had to move at times, and it was sad to leave friends behind and, just kind of life things. But that was the first time that I really experienced grief. Um, there's nothing that can really prepare you for what that feels like. Um, and I think it didn't really hit until I was released from the emergency room and I was allowed to go and see my friend's body. And there were several friends in there, everyone's crying. And it was so surreal to look at his body and his chest wouldn't move. It wasn't rising and falling with breath. It was very disturbing in a lot of ways. It was so complicated. I couldn't get my mind around it. And I remember feeling after that, as the days progressed and I had to make changes of my plans, and now I was going to stay in that city instead of going across the country to a different summer job, um, and trying to make decisions is really hard when you're grieving. But I was able to do that. I was able to figure out where to live and what to do, and but I still carried this really uncomfortable feeling of grief, and I realized how raw I felt and how vulnerable I felt, and especially because it had been a car accident and I had been a participant. Then I found myself living with a fear of another car accident happening, which is totally normal. And it felt like there was a monster named car accident that was just around the corner. And wherever I was, it was around the corner waiting for me. That's how that felt. And so riding in a car was difficult. Driving a car was difficult. Going on a trip was going to be difficult, traveling, because I had that fear that this was going to happen again. But I do distinctly remember feeling like I would never be happy again, that this was so sad that I would never be happy again. Unfortunately, about 3 months later, I came home from having dinner with friends to my college apartment where I was living with my sister for that summer, since I wasn't where else I had planned to be. And there were police cars along the street in front of our apartment. And I made a joke of like, oh, somebody's bike got stolen. And then we got out of the car. A friend who'd gotten there before us in the other car, there were two cars driving, my friends. And the other car that had gotten there first, one of those friends came to the door, was like to the car window and said, Michelle needs to come inside right now. And her tone, just my heart sank. It's like, what could be wrong? And then just a moment later, my sister came out and was just heartbroken, devastated, and let me know that our brother had taken his life. That was another just monumental, earth-shattering, incomprehensible thing. So I look at that. That was 1999. I talk about that summer as the worst summer of my life. And it still is. Thankfully, it hasn't been continuing like that the rest of my life. But I guess that's partly why I wanted to talk about this, because no matter how much grief we experience tragedies, and it's not going to be every day. It feels like it at times. That was so big and so painful. It just seems like it's doomed to repeat itself. But I think that's one thing we can train ourselves to take comfort in, and to pause and reflect that they don't happen every day. We're going to be okay. And as we move forward, as time goes by, as we seek professional help, and I did go to counseling for a few years at the university counseling center and at different times in my life. And it has been really helpful. I needed to understand what grief was and how it worked in my body because I didn't know that it was a cycle or, there was some repeating element to it. Um, because I remember coming to a point where I think it maybe was after my brother's funeral where I felt a lot of love. I felt so much concern from family and friends. I felt so cared about, and that was so helpful. It was so helpful to feel like there were people praying for me and caring for me and reaching out to check on me. That I did. I kind of came out of that initial shock and I felt okay. I felt pretty good. And I was having to make plans for the fall semester because again my plans were changing. I was going to go to a different university, but then I had no family there, so I decided to go to a different university where I would have a lot of family and potential support. And so again my life was upside down. But I did get to a point where I felt okay. I felt peaceful. I felt reassured. I mean, that's all I can say is like I just felt okay. I felt pretty good. And then like the next day or sometime, just boom, like the grief hit again and sadness and sorrow. And I was like, wait a minute, I thought I was better. I thought I was done. I healed. I was done. Wait, why is this starting over again? I was so confused. And so that's where counseling was very helpful for me because the counselor was able to help explain how this is a process your body and your brain have to get through, and it's going to happen again and again where you're going to feel those waves of sadness, and this is what you can do about it. And so that was very helpful because it was very shocking the first time that I felt peace finally, and then boom, it was knocked off my feet again. um, but as time went by, I noticed how sometimes the anniversary would come and go. And then I would just think, wait a minute, yesterday was August 8th. That was the anniversary of my brother's passing. I was like, wait a minute, how did I miss that? How could I possibly have not noticed and been affected by it? And then other times where well, I'd say like 2 or 3 weeks sometimes, we're just like, oh, I just had this like heaviness, this weight I couldn't shake, and it didn't seem like anything was helping, and I didn't know why I felt so down. And then I realized, oh, next week is the anniversary. That's why I'm feeling this way, because that wave had come again. And it was so hard to accept it sometimes that I felt so guilty if I would miss miss the anniversary. Like, how could that be? But by that point, I was married, I had little children, and time had passed, and I had a lot of joy that had come into my life, and a lot of hope and reason to keep going, and my faith was just such an anchor in helping me to just have hope that life was still good and meaningful, and I was going to be happy at times. It was still going to be good. I was proving myself wrong that I was going to be sad forever. Now I was like, oh, I am happy. I'm happy a lot. I'm happy with my children. I'm happy with my husband. We have great times. And then boom, hit me again. And not on an anniversary, but some random time. And that's what grief does. It kind of is like dredging this up again, and I didn't understand why until um, probably a lot more recently, maybe in the last 10 years, that I had an experience with somebody who was very emotionally unwell. And um, and she was accusing me and different family members of all kinds of horrible things. And I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. This didn't happen. That's not how it worked. It was this way. Things are fine. You're loved. Everything's okay. Why are you like this? I just didn't understand this person's illness. But just taking all these accusations were really painful and disgusting. Like it just felt dirty and yucky to be like accused of being hateful and unkind and all these things. And then finally she made some sort of really painful jab about my brother's suicide. And um, and I think it was related to how we should have been over it by now. And we should have been over it by 3 or 4 years later. We should have been over it. And at that point, it had probably been maybe 18 years, something like that, when this unfortunate exchange was happening with this person. And that's when I was just like, look, grief doesn't resolve that fast. And the reason why I grieve even now, so this even further down the road than 4 years, which you're claiming should be done, I still feel sad. I still feel that pain, that raw, deep kind of ache. And it's because I love him. It's because I love my brother that I feel that in the first place. And once I got off that call, I said, this isn't helping. This isn't going anywhere. And I got off that call, and I remember walking into the kitchen and just grabbing the counter at the sink. I think I was trying to get a drink of water, but I just grabbed onto the edge of the sink and just cried, just wept. And I couldn't speak, and I just was letting it come. Just completely letting that sorrow, that grief, just like head to toe, just wash through me. And my kids came in and my husband came in, and they're putting their arms around me like, what's wrong? Are you okay? And I didn't try to stop it. I didn't try to like wipe it off and pretend like things are fine. I just let it come. And it just flowed and flowed and flowed through me. And I just wept. And it was actually one of the most healing moments of that time up to then, and I would say even till now. In this 26 years of grief, that moment was so healing. I didn't hide my tears. I didn't pretend I was okay. I did that a lot in college when I had roommates, and I didn't know how to express that I was in pain. And I would just hide in the bathroom and cry. Or I'd go for a walk in the dark. If I was in class and it would just hit me and I just couldn't keep it together, I'd just slip out and go to the bathroom stall and just like, stop, not right now, not right now, not right now. Did a lot of that. So for this moment, and there were other times where I just let myself cry, but this time felt different because I connected my grief not to the sorrow and tragedy of his death, but to my love for him. That was my healing point. It was a big turning point. And it also made me less afraid of grief. It made me less afraid to welcome back those feelings. And I began to call grief my wise professor who'd come back to teach me again. I realized that completely owning that truth felt so good, that I loved my brother, and that's why I was grieving. That was a powerful point in me being able to share that with other people too, to say your grief is born out of love. That's why it's there. If you hadn't loved, you wouldn't grieve. And we don't want to become afraid of loving people because of the grief that will come when they leave. We want to look at all the beautiful moments and capturing them and taking them in and enjoying and relishing every day. So I don't think I even introduced myself. My name is Michelle Cox. I'm a life coach and a mother of 6 kids. Been married to my husband for 22 years, almost 23. And I have had to also overcome fear of losing my children or my husband, because that grief also triggers um, a desire to prevent feeling it again with somebody else, right? We want to prevent that from happening. And even as a college student, if I was breaking up with a boyfriend, I just was so nervous and afraid what would happen if I hurt him too much. Could he take his life too? I would get really scared, and I would know like this relationship isn't really working out, but what do I do? Because I don't want to be responsible. I don't want that to happen. But I had to. I'm glad I broke up with the guys that I did, and I ended up with who I ended up with. Um, but there was that kind of that fear, and because of the way that we're wired, we do want to prevent pain. We do want to avoid suffering, because it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like that's helping us to survive, right? It seems totally counterintuitive to say that grief is good for me. Who would possibly say that, right? Um, but grief changes the way you look at life. Grief changes the way that you see the smaller problems. And that was why I started to welcome grief, my wise old professor, to come back, because I realized I'm getting upset about, the mess the kids are making and they're not obeying me. And I burned dinner and things didn't turn out. And like those things became small again because, my goodness, losing a loved one is so much bigger. And if there was drama with friends, or the car's not starting again, we have to get it towed again, those are big problems, but they're really not as big as losing a loved one. So it felt like experiencing grief helped me to put things in perspective. And I could take a big breath and just calm myself down and realize every single day that I can crawl into bed knowing all of my children are safe and they're healthy and well, that is a perfect day. And my husband is beside me, or he's on a trip, but he's okay, whatever it might be. But just every day since then, I started to say, today was a perfect day. Everybody's where they're supposed to be here, right? Now, there will be a time when we do start to part ways. And for me, my faith is just the biggest part of holding on and having hope. I also want to offer that looking at how we develop and how we change and how we grow because of the grief that we experience, it opens our hearts and expands our capacity to love and care for others. Very quickly after I had that horrible summer, 1999, I remember there was a boy I had a crush on, and who lived in the apartments next to mine, and his dad passed away. And I genuinely just felt just such sadness for him, and his sister was also a friend of mine. And so because I knew what grief felt like, then I felt motivated, I felt activated to go and do something for them. And I took them, I think I took them a candle that they could light. And I had started doing this too. Whenever I was feeling grief, I would light a candle. And that was just kind of like me acknowledging my pain without having to sound a trumpet and announce it to the world, but just I would light that candle. And so I gave them a candle, and I just was able to grieve with them and felt compassion. And I often talk about compassion because compassion is so powerful. Compassion helps you to stop being angry at someone. Compassion helps you to stop being resentful. Compassion helps you to stop judging or comparing or um, being envious of others. Compassion just washes all away, and you just see the person as a human being who's in need of some care. just like you do. And grief does that. Grief has that potential to expand your heart, expand your your circle of influence. You hear about somebody who's going through something and you just want to go and be there and help them, or send a meal, or give them a call, send a card, something to let them know that you are aware of them, and how meaningful and helpful that is. It makes such a big difference. It's so beautiful to see people mobilized because of compassion, but you have compassion because you felt pain before. And so when we allow ourselves to accept grief as a teacher, as a guide, as a molding of your spirit and who you are, you don't have to fear it. You don't have to fight it. Grief becomes something that is kind of precious. It's not something that you're going to shout around and look at me, I'm grieving. You don't do that, but it's something that's quiet and creates opportunities for stillness, where you might be so busy and in a hustle and bustle all the time. But grief helps you to go still. And when we're still, we can truly experience what grief is trying to teach us, to hold on to those beautiful memories, hold on to the gratitude that you had that person in your life. Have that gratitude that you can focus on the good that they did, their good qualities, and try to adopt that in yourself. In honor of my loved one, I'm going to go do this good thing. And we see that a lot. People will start a foundation, they'll start some sort of nonprofit or community outreach kind of organization, because they're motivated out of that love, out of that grief, that they want, in the honor of their loved one, do good in the world. What a powerful thing. We can let grief do the same for us. And we do need time, yes, to sit and feel it. Just let it flow through. Like that time I was just hanging on to the kitchen sink and just let it come. And it was the first time that I noticed my tears were different. I remember afterwards thinking, oh, my eyes aren't burning. A lot of times when we cry, our eyes are red and they hurt and they're stinging. But this time it was like my eyes felt bathed and soothed. It was a different kind of tears. I'd love to do more research on tears. I know there's differences. I'd love to learn more about that. But it just felt so washing, cleansing, and healing that I just let it come and I let it flow, and I didn't stop it. I just let it go. And I felt such relief after that. So I give you also a metaphor where when you're feeling that grief, and it's a heavy, low energy emotion. So I recommend that when you're feeling it, that you do find a way to sit down and stop moving, and just let it come through, and just imagine it just like washing through you, like you're sitting in a waterfall, and it just comes through, and just hold your heart and think about the beautiful memories that you have with that person, and let that just flow out of you, and just imagine it kind of puddling around you, just flowing out of you and puddling around. And as you're having beautiful memories of this person, thinking about things that they loved to do, things they loved eating, music they loved, or funny memories that you have, their favorite sweater or sport or whatever it might be. As you're thinking about that, just imagine like those clouds are breaking apart that are above you, and the sunlight starts to come down, little fingers of sunlight, and they come and they touch the puddles of grief that have flowed out of you, and they start to let it evaporate and let it go. And what you keep is love. what you keep becomes sweet. And you just know they're still with you. As long as you have memory, you have them right there with you. And you can change from despair and resentment that they're gone, but hold on to that gratitude that you had that relationship, that you had that person. It helps you to move forward with confidence too, and not live in fear of the next person who's going to pass away and the next event that's tragic. That's something I'm always having to work through. Like, sometimes I feel that my teenager goes off, drives away, and I'm like, oh, please be careful. I want you to make it there safely, and I want to track them and see they got there, But I have to like remind myself those are things I don't control. I'm going to be open to life unfolding. It's going to unfold as it will. I'm going to do my best to teach my kids safety. I'm going to teach them precaution, teach them to be careful. I'm going to take care of my husband and my kids and try to give them healthy foods and take care of their bodies. But I'm out of control about their timing. I have to just embrace right now. Our brains are amazing. They can think about the past. They can think about right now. They can think about the future. We have to remember that when we're thinking about possible tragedy in the future, we're not always doing ourselves a very good favor. If I spent all my time worrying about potential danger and tragedy, I would be very stressed, very volatile, probably, and controlling and domineering. And that doesn't make for good relationships right now. So I've had to really learn to just let go and embrace right now. Right now is what's happening. Right now, I know what's happening. Right now is current. Anything in the future is unknown and I can't control it. So I'm going to focus on building that good relationship right now. I'm going to focus on helping teach my kids skills that would improve their safety. But the most important thing I want is for them to know that I love them, I care about them, and I'm giving them room to grow. So I can't stifle them, trying to protect them. I have to open them up and provide them the skills, and they go off into the world and live their lives. So I just want to finish today about grief, walking with grief. Allow it to come. Allow it to teach you. Allow it to put things back in perspective. Allow it to remind you of the love that you have for your special people in your life who passed away. Look for beautiful ways to honor them and remember them. You might have photographs in a special place. You might have something that you review, that you look at or you watch or that you hold as a way to remember them. And, take that time to just express gratitude and express gratitude. And it will help turn it from bitter and make it a little more sweet. And if you have that faith, that belief that you'll see your loved ones again, hold on to that. Let that be true and let that carry you through and let that comfort you. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you again next week. Bye.